Hey, Shal, we're tuning in for another episode of Bankedoutt Radio Show. This is our special branch off of the Bankedoutt Ballot, where we bring on candidates, elected officials to give you more insight into how these positions affect your daily lives. Today we have Dr. Alicia Johnson, who is part of the Georgia Public Commissioners, one of five representatives that are elected officials. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for coming onto the platform.
Thank you for having me.
So, I recently did an interview with someone who's running for a position of the Georgia Public Commission, and I learned a lot of different interesting things. Didn't know that the state of Georgia is one of, I think, well, no, sorry, that's a different position, but I didn't realize it was a statewide position, even though it's made of many different districts. The five, I believe, five different districts, and
Yes,
then the impact that they have on the lives with dealing with utilities, not only power, but also telecommunications. I believe you also deal with in some capacity railways as well.
yeah, that's with and around in and around eminent domain. But the Public Service Commission in Georgia oversees utility regulation, and so that includes natural gas, water, telecommunications, and electricity or energy.
So we had a great conversation about just that in itself, the electrician, energy, the fact that I believe the utility bills have risen, whether I think six times within the last 3 years.
Absolutely, yeah. So the cost of our energy in Georgia, when we think about Georgia overall, the impact of having increased energy bills is significant in our state. When we have 159 counties in Georgia,
Mhm.
a lot more than most states. Of those 159 counties, 120 of those are designated as rural counties. But in our state, just to give you a context around energy burden and affordability, in our state, 42% of Georgia's residents, our citizenry, are asset limited, income constrained working families. So that's almost half our state, right? These aren't
Mhm.
people who are sitting around twiddling their thumbs, they're working families. When we get down into those rural counties that I mentioned, that goes up to 52%. So
Mm.
52% of folks who live in Georgia and rural counties are asset limited, income constrained working families. When you crisscross urban areas such as those in Savannah, Atlanta, Macon, some of our more urban counties and with urban context, childhood poverty jumps up to 80% or more.
Mhm.
So, and the floor for affordability or the floor for energy burden is about 6%. Yeah, when we think about energy burden across our state and the impact of having six rate increases in a short amount of time, in
Mhm.
a within a 3 year period across our state, and what that really means for families. So in essence, again, Georgia has 159 counties, right?
Mhm.
120 of those are rural, which means there's limited economic development mechanisms within that the infrastructure of that county for that particular county citizens. 42% of Georgia's families are asset limited, income constrained working families.
Mhm.
In rural communities, 52% of those families are asset limited, income constrained working families. When you crisscross urban areas across Georgia, in opportunity zones, that childhood poverty jumps up to over 80% in some of
Mhm.
our federal opportunity zones. So, for example, in the county I live in, Chatham County, there's about 11 federal opportunity zones. And so we see childhood poverty rates skyrocket. So
Hmm.
these aren't people who are sitting around, twiddling their thumbs. These are people who are working families. And so when we have that amount of rate increase and ratepayers are dealing with that, consumers are dealing with that, they are literally making the decision
Hmm.
between a prescription, a meal, and their utility bills, right?
Hmm.
And as we see groceries and gas and, the astronomical rate by which those things have been impacted, inflation and so on, those families are making decisions that are truly grueling.
Hmm.
Um, and they have considerations around childcare, transportation, health cost. The fact that we have people being kicked out of the health safety net that we had with the Affordable Care Act
Hmm.
is not only, is it abhorrent, but it literally could be a life or death situation for a
Yeah.
family who has to decide whether or not they can get medications they need to function and and that has ripple effects across our economic infrastructure. That may mean people can't show up to work because they're sick, or they can't have internet and so they can't work from home or have a telehealth appointment or even apply for a better job, or it's all of those things. It's not both, it's not one or the other, it's both and
Hmm.
so when we have folks who are making decisions around utility regulation that is really in the public policy square, right?
Hmm.
We're hitting the economic issues head on, dead center. And we should not be making decisions that are just alone for economic development, but we should be making decisions about economic mobility. And that's for the long-term health of our state's economy, right?
Yes.
And when I talk about economic mobility, I'm talking about the ability of a family, of a child to have opportunity in our state to shift their income, grow their income over their lifetime, their working lifetime, and that we have in our decision making the creation of bridging capital that gets people from the social safety net and onto the economy. And we've not seen that in the previous decisions of our Public Service Commission. And those are some of the reasons that I was inspired to run for the office,
Hmm.
not necessarily for the partisan and pundit talking points,
Hmm.
because I don't believe that good public policy is red or blue policy. I believe good public policy is people centered policy. And that means that we're making long term decisions for the growth, the economic infrastructure, and the public health framework
Hmm.
for our community's futures long term.
So I wanted to ask this particular position with the power that it entails with the body of it, all right?
Mhm.
Why is it doesn't seem like it's promoted for the importance that
Oh, well, I mean, really,
it
I we could get into why that is and why that I'm the first African American woman to ever serve on this body in its 100-year history. We could
yes.
certainly talk about that. And I think that because for it's been beneficial to certain groups
Hmm.
in our ecosystem, that the position wasn't transparent or accountable, and uh, that it was certainly advantageous
Hmm.
for certain groups of our constituency to ensure that people don't know or are educated about
Mm-hmm.
the business of the Public Service Commission. And I could argue that across many commissions
Mm-hmm.
in our
Yeah.
state and nationally, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that two positions, I believe. What is I think one from District is it 5 and District 3, if I'm not
Yeah, they're
mistaken.
up on the ballot again.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be conscientious about
Mm-hmm.
those seats and the decision, because if we are not, we will
Mm-hmm.
continue to see the decisions being made at the Public Service Commission, not necessarily in the most uh, public conscious way,
Mm-hmm.
um, and where they are not centering again our constituency
Mm-hmm.
in their decision making. This is an opportunity this year
Mm-hmm.
to turn the tide of the Public Service Commission so that it is people centered. And I hope that voters who are connected and who are listening
Mm-hmm.
understand the importance of voting down ballot
Mm-hmm.
and what that looks like in real time, because we are seeing in real time what happens when you elect or neglect
Mm-hmm.
folks who are not uh, people conscious and
Yeah.
who are not centered in their policy making. This conversation around affordability was sparked during my campaign, and is
Mm-hmm.
now uh, been adopted for you know for lack of a better framework for talking points across the election cycle. But I can tell you that it has to be more than talk.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be the commitment from the
Mm-hmm.
people that we elect in our office that they are going to be people centered policymakers.
Yes.
And we see what happens when you can have a legislature whose tax dollars, whose salaries and
Mm-hmm.
health insurance is funded by people like me and you,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they refuse to provide health care funding for the exact people who are paying for their families' health care.
Yes.
There has to be some call to question on some of on this legislation.
So let's say the election has passed and those representatives are elected, and let's say they're not people centered. What can you do in your individual position to help and to maintain and to keep advocating
I mean,
for?
I can toe the line. I
Mhm.
can bring attention to decisions, but the reality of it is, right?
Mhm.
If you want somebody to do something about it and they're outvoted, and we have a democratic system, then you're
Mhm.
going to have to put people in the seats that can vote with the constituency in the best interest of the constituency. There's very little that can be done when the right people aren't in the seats, right?
Mhm.
We see that playing out on the national stage,
Mhm.
where our democracy is being called into question. And what's unfortunate is that we saw a 900 and almost 1,000 page document that outlined what would happen in our country, right?
Mhm.
There is a full policy strategy that has been outlined and printed and published. People can go read it. A
Mhm.
lot of what is playing out is there. We're about 46-50% through that policy document,
Mhm.
from what we've seen in over a year's time in our current legislative state. And the response to that can only be limited public outcry
Hmm.
unless the right people are in the seat. You can't turn that around unless the right people are in the seat. And that's just the reality of how democracy works. It is not democracy is not a it's a full contact sport.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. We don't get the option to sit it out.
Yes.
And so I have little patience for people who don't, who are so apathetic that they decide to not engage
Hmm.
in the democratic process because it's not just a choice you're making for yourself. You're making that choice for the economic future of your children,
Hmm.
of, and future generations. You're making a you're neglecting not just a right
Hmm.
and a privilege, but you're neglecting your duty as a citizen in this country.
Yeah. And
I think it's a dereliction of duty.
yes, I definitely agree with that. Y'all's particular position, I believe it's 6 years. You
Yes,
serve,
this
and there's
term I
staggered
ran to
terms.
yes. The my running mate, Mr. Hubbard, Commissioner Hubbard, ran to complete an appointed term, so he is up for reelection in
Hmm.
November.
Hmm.
And then seat 5 on our commission is also up, and there are several candidates running for that
And I think the
those
next seat
terms.
wouldn't be up until I think 2028, correct? So
Yes,
if
that's
the
correct.
if people do not vote in their best interests as a community, then they wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. So until 2028, so they have to go through
And
another
let me
couple of
just say
years.
this,
Hmm.
correct. And then my seat will be up in 2030. But the reality is the decisions being made in this Public Service Commission
Hmm.
will actually impact Georgia's energy future for the next 20 years or more.
Mm.
So if they do not participate, they are subjecting themselves to, quite frankly,
Hmm.
uh, a moratorium on their energy future.
So you ran your campaign, and I saw that, when you had won, I think you had a total of 900,000 people vote for you in
Yeah,
totality across the state.
over about 60, obtained about 61% of the vote.
Which is phenomenal.
Hmm.
But what did you learn about, just people voting in general, especially when it comes to things like this? Because I like to tell people to focus on local politics because the presidential elections get all the notoriety, because so much money is dumped into campaign advertisement and pushing to
Hmm.
exercise your vote. I don't think midterm elections and local elections or positions that affect people more, I would say, in their daily lives. So
Hmm.
positions like y'all's are like overlooked. What was your consensus of going out there and being on a campaign trail and just talking to people and
Well, yeah, that's a great question because I got to do more than test an assumption, right? I
mhm,
got to prove my assumption in that, again, good policy isn't red or blue policy. Good
mhm,
policy is people-centered policy. And there was a tremendous amount of crossover vote
mhm,
because turns out Republicans care about their bills too.
mhm,
Republicans care about whether or not their children drink clean water and breathe clean air. And they care about making having prudent decision makers in seats of authority and regulation. And I think as we come closer to midterms and future elections, we've got to be not just strategic, but we have to be discerning and wise as we think about policy decisions.
mhm,
And I don't think that being prudent and wise and discerning belongs to one group of people.
mhm,
And so just not making dumb long-term decisions based
Hmm.
on,
Hmm.
loyalty to party is no long, it's not serving us well.
Yeah, I definitely get that. And I tell people all the time, I think things should be limited anyway. It keeps, fresh ideas keep coming in. That's the whole point of stuff like this. So what's on the upcoming docket for y'all to vote on to where the public needs like more awareness or education, so therefore
Well, there are
they
some
can
key things
participate?
that are coming up in the Public Service Commission space that will include our fuel and storm recovery
Hmm.
reviews. People should be aware of that because even though our utility has had a great public relations campaign about not raising base rates,
Hmm.
doesn't mean that your bill will not go up because
Hmm.
the votes focused around storm recovery, fuel recovery, and those kinds of things also impact our bill, and folks could see that on their bills,
Hmm.
depending on what votes look like
So
over the
in
next 3 months, 90 days.
so in doing your position, I'm sure I believe y'all also have committees that you are appointed to. Is that correct?
Correct.
Within.
I serve as the chair of the Telecommunications Committee. Those appointments, once you
Hmm.
are elected, you serve at the request of the chairman. Our chairman, Jason Shaw,
Hmm.
is who appoints those those chairs.
Is there anything that within the telecommunications industry that people need to be made aware of? I know some things like, when a big thing a few years ago was like the merger of a few of the uh,
Yeah,
telephone companies and whether or not that was going to be approved and, not having enough diversity where it's healthy competition, but not having something where one particular company dominates and is a
yeah,
monopoly.
like with our energy, we have a energy utility monopoly here
Hmm.
in Georgia. I think there are there's still some conversion out there that needs to take place in terms of moving from copper to more fiber networks. So that's going to take place probably with little to no interruption for consumers, but there may be
Hmm.
some sort of impact that they will have to be conscious of. Um, I think that we are growing in terms of broadband and telecommunications in our state in a
Hmm.
way that we haven't seen in decades, and so that's good that our infrastructure, particularly in rural areas, is growing.
Is there another state that Georgia can possibly model its energy consumption and infrastructure under to where some states have
I think
shifted
that,
to
yeah,
like
I think there are
cleaner
many
and
states that we can learn from. Not no state is perfect
mm,
in how they manage or model energy. But there are certainly best practices, I think, nationally that we can look to to you know
mm,
in certain practices that we could, and those happen to be in places like Colorado, New Jersey,
mm.
Minnesota. Just there are other places that we can look to for some smart ideas.
What are they doing in particular that you like? Or is it like the use of like, solar power batteries? Is it the wind
Yes, it's
funnels?
so the use of the integration of solar battery storage, the use of other energy sources, the adoption of clean energy, integrated plans, integrated distribution. So, yes.
Is there any way, because I remember having this conversation with someone who was running, and she had mentioned how Georgia Power um, can do more when it comes to like the cleaner energy and the programs that they
Absolutely. We
offer.
don't have we don't have good clean energy plans. There's no
Hmm.
integrated resource plan that includes the use and on-ramp for clean energy solutions, which is not only it's not prudent, it's just not smart, right?
Hmm.
Clean energy doesn't belong in a special interest category. It's not a
Hmm.
special interest. It's actually an innovative solution that can help drive jobs, improve health outcomes,
Hmm.
and you have smarter uses of energy, right?
Hmm.
And innovation in our state. So it's the data's there, and the
Hmm.
fact that we have a utility company who's not seeking out better ways to serve
Hmm.
its constituency and its customers. I think it's a derelict corporate social responsibility. I think they're derelict in that regard.
What can the public do just in general to like help support, you know what I'm saying, pushing them towards like a cleaner.
I think they can vote for public service commissioners and regulators who understand that reality.
Okay, so I get it. The power is in y'all's position to be able to like, they come to y'all with
To
these
be
particular
able to
requests.
direct that,
Hmm.
requires a public service commission majority.
Hmm. So I guess more awareness being brought to these issues that are like, I
Hmm.
feel like they're being swept under the rug for some reason. But that's just me and
Yeah.
the way that I see it. That's the whole point of having like conversations like these where we can put them out and open them where people can understand and go do research. And like you said, the data is there for clean
Mhm.
energy. And I would imagine that just in, a society and a civilization, you would want something that could be more sustainable. Um,
Absolutely. You would want something that's sustainable, that's reliable, that has less public health impacts,
mhm.
that's going to grow your economy
Hmm.
and grow your infrastructure and reliability. Not to have that again is saying that you're not a good steward of our dollars
Hmm.
in this, in this state.
Hmm.
You're not a good steward of our dollars or of our energy infrastructure.
I wanted to get your perspective on just being an elected official. I believe
Mhm.
this is your first time being an elected official,
It
correct?
is.
What has changed for you in regards of like, how you saw yourself doing this position and now that you're actually in the position, is there a difference?
Um, I would say I'm less of a politician and more of a preacher.
Okay.
And I don't plan that to have to change. I
Hmm.
understand the immense responsibility of stewardship
Hmm.
in an elected capacity. And that's why I ran, because I was frustrated with those who did not understand that
Hmm.
and who do not frame their public service with the utmost integrity and the sense of that I am stewarding this this public space, that I've been elected as a steward, and not a puppet
Hmm.
or a instrument
Hmm.
of whatever system I decide to play to be, right?
Hmm.
But that I am in essence being entrusted to act in the best interest,
Hmm.
short term and long term,
Hmm.
of people,
Hmm.
and that every the data are those dots are actual people.
Hmm.
Um, we in regulatory authority, you hear people talk about ratepayers, and ratepayers are consumers or industrial complexes, commercial complexes. But the reality
Hmm.
is that if we don't start putting a face that that's somebody's child, that that's a grandma, that's a mother, that's a sister, that's an uncle, that's a cousin, that's my grandson that's going to inherit the legacy I leave in
Hmm.
this very public space, right? If we don't start having that framework, then you know, we then God help us all,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that we have come to a place that we can't afford to put people in seats
Hmm.
that do not have that framework, and who are not good stewards. And for
Hmm.
those people who have not been good stewards, then it's time to call them to question and to be accountable.
Hmm.
And you have that ability. You and I have that ability, and we have that public responsibility to advocate from self to system with a vote.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that and love the fact that you said that. So, have you gotten any pushback because it's like, you're the new kid on the block and here's this system of things being done the way that it used to be done in the past, and it sounds like, what I'm saying, you're wanting to come in here and disrupt a little bit. Have you gotten
I
any?
call myself a, disruptive innovator, right?
Okay.
You can't be in public office and not expect disruption of some sort or opposition.
Hmm.
Um, you know, uh, I like to say I've been built for it. Um,
Hmm.
as a as an African American woman, the cultural reality,
Hmm.
legislative reality, corporate reality,
Hmm.
working reality, that and context that I have lived in and developed my both my philosophical, moral, and political framework. you
Hmm.
know i'm uh it's expected. I'm not in fear of it,
Hmm.
and I'm certainly not going to back down with any opportunity to speak truth, which
Hmm.
has not been, it's a little trite now to talk about truth to power because we've so destabilized our language and so destabilized just poor public decorum in
Hmm.
a way that when you say that, it almost becomes trite when we talk about that. But truth is empirical and objective. It is not
Hmm.
uh, like, as some hope for us to believe, subjective, and I get to call it this or that. The reality is that it either is or it ain't,
Yeah.
and we can talk about who benefits from our policy making decisions, and that is not clouded. That is simply a fact.
Hmm.
And if you don't have data, you just have a theory. And
Hmm.
so the data, like I said, my election tested my assumption and proved it to be true overwhelmingly, 61%.
Yes. So, like I said,
um, uh,
you running against your the candidate that you ran against, and I saw the percentages. I was like, yeah, that was a huge
yeah,
disparity in votes,
yeah. And an
which
incumbent who had been in office for 14 years. So,
which is amazing to be able to do that
yeah.
in itself. Because a lot of people, when they're running for offices like that, and going against the incumbent, most of the time the incumbent, what I'm saying, wins because of name recognition and all that stuff, and people are just not paying attention to policy, and they're just voting
Hmm.
off of based off, what I'm saying, memory of, oh, well, I've seen this person's name so many times or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And there it
Right.
is, and don't understand how they're
Well,
casting
it's
their
time
vote.
out. Yeah, it's time
Uh-huh.
out for that. We're no longer living, like I said, we don't have the luxury
Mhm.
of missing 4 years of policy making.
Exactly. What would you like to happen within the next couple of years, ideally? You know what I'm saying? If you could like, have your utopia policy making that, was passed and these things were set in place, what would that look like?
Again, that we had people in seats who understood the stewardship of policymaking and what that means for our current voting populace and for generations to come.
Hmm.
And that is at our highest office, as well as our smallest municipal seat. We don't need to have school board members who don't understand the economic reality of those working families that I talked about. We don't need to have county commissioners or city aldermen who do not understand what it means to create bridging capital
Hmm.
from social safety net programs and onto our economy. We should not be looking to fund, to continue to have toxic charity models where we keep people in food lines and keep people in the lines for school supplies year after year. Families should have be afforded the dignity and opportunity to move and to have economic mobility in their economic infrastructure. And that's both at the city, economic, and state level, but most certainly at the federal level, where we are investing billions and trillions of dollars into a system
Hmm.
that can literally decide whether or not you're going to have health care tomorrow and if you're going to be able to get the medicine you need to survive, to go to work and to feed your children, whether or not we don't have early education models in place with the defunding of Head Start and preschools. That's coming in 2027. I think people need to recognize that with the passage of HR 1, whether it's the big ugly bill to you or the big beautiful bill to you, that 2026 is a budget appropriation year. That's a cushion year.
Hmm.
That's when, the money was already there because of the previous budget pass and the opportunity to legislate and come up with a new budget. 2026 is a funded budget appropriation cushion,
Hmm.
right? 2027, we're going to see all those cuts come hit us like a bat upside our head in
Hmm.
our communities because Head Start is going to be defunded. Energy assistance is going to be defunded. Childcare, transportation, all of those things that we rely on, social safety net is going to shrink incredibly because there's just not going to be the funding there. And that is not something our current philanthropy model can undertake. They can't fund the holes that are coming to food assistance, to
Hmm.
health care, to early education. It's going to be impossible to do. And we can't close our eyes and hope for the best this time. We have to be fully and authentically engaged in the public square and
Hmm.
advocating for ourselves so that we can have a midterm that yields the possibility of restoring back a democracy
Hmm.
that again centers people in its decision making and policy making, or else it's going to be a bleak future.
Yeah, so basically put all the people who are for the people in
Mm-hmm.
position of power to, like you said, plug those holes that are coming back up so therefore we can move forward from there. I've always been a big component of if you take care of the people then in its body can take care of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people don't have those philosophies. And I'm like, how can we, because we're a country where we only have so much resources anyway, and we shouldn't be just sending stuff in all these other different directions when we need to take care of what we need to take care of home first. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't pour from an empty cup, as the old saying
Yeah, my
is.
grandma used to say charity starts at home before it spreads abroad.
Exactly. Um, would you encourage or warrant more public participation in the hearings that y'all have in the meetings?
Absolutely. It doesn't need to just be advocacy groups or interveners or just one off people. The mayors, the
Mhm,
county commissioners, your school board, everybody should be advocating for their elected officials to show up in front of me at the Public Service Commission
that's what,
because our decisions impact every area of life. And so all of the constituency and stakeholders, every consumer, again, and every elected official needs to be calling into those meetings. They need to be getting on the docket. They need to be expressing their opinions. If all 159 county commissioners showed up for those counties about what's happening, how those constituency are facing those decisions, that's going to look a lot different than just
mhm,
me saying it or a special interest group or advocacy group showing up to say it.
mhm.
We need those people on the front lines, and we need them to show up.
I like that. I like how you said that too. Like all those commissioners. So I'm like, the next time I talk to commissioners, like, yeah, y'all need to go to these meetings in
Yeah,
Atlanta.
you need to know what's
And
happening and why
exactly,
these people are making decisions for the people that you're serving. This is a part
exactly.
of your county responsibility. So, yeah, we need them.
Okay. So is there anything that we didn't get to touch on that you wanted to talk about, or I know
No,
we
I
talked on a
believe I
lot.
answered all your questions. At least I hope I did, and I hope I encourage people to stay involved and to stay engaged.
Okay, and I guess people just in general, if they want to learn more about the position and the commission, they can just go to the website.
They
Um,
can, and they can reach out. My executive assistant's name is Faith Henning. That's F Henning at psc.ga.gov. That's her
mhm.
email. My email is ajohnson at psc.ga.gov. And they can
Okay.
reach out directly.
Well, I appreciate your time, Dr. Johnson, and for all the insight and information that you have given across the board and how this particular position really does affect every aspect of people's lives and what
It
people can
does.
do to go
Yeah,
and, you know, secure the proper person for the people. Don't just put
right.
people in a position of power and not knowing what their intentions are. Hold
Correct.
people accountable. So, thank you for your time. Y'all can go and, of course, the website will be displayed on the screen, and you can learn more about the Georgia Public Commission and all the things that they are doing. And make sure y'all get out and vote. I believe this is taking place in like after the general. I
There's
think
the
it's
yes,
yeah,
there's the primaries which will
primaries in
happen
it.
this summer, yes,
Mhm.
and then the actual vote in November.
So vote twice, everyone.
Vote twice. Show
Votes
up.
twice.
Show up. Show up.
And y'all can keep tuning into Bankedoutt Ballot on YouTube and spread it for everyone. And then also the regular content, Bankedoutt_radio_show on IG and Apple and across all different audio platforms.